feel like our generation went through a really big phase of like casual sex, hookups, like friends with benefits, situationships, no strings attached. But the younger generations are almost going through the opposite, where they're like, I don't want anything. Like, I'd rather be celibate, which there's not.
This is an amazing episode with one of my best friends, Alex Nashton, who is a life and love coach who studied neuroscience at UCLA, which I studied neuroscience at USC, so we should be rivals, but we're best friends. And this episode, we go through so many interesting things. We start by talking about relationships and our brains when we're disconnected from our partner. What happens, what sends us into fight, flight, how to know when you're there, and what you need when your brain goes into fight, flight. We also talk about screens and the impact of the digital world on our intimacy, on our sex life, on our relationships, and how we can detox from our screens. And then we talk about eco-anxiety. And if you're feeling that sense of fear or anxiety around what's happening in the world, how you can ground that into tangible action and creativity. So it's an amazing episode. I hope you enjoy. Grab yourself a warm beverage, go on a long nature walk, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, welcome to this cozy episode of Eros and Earth. I'm here with my good friend Alex. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me, Megan. I'm really happy to be here with you and with all of you that are listening.
Yes, if you are watching this, you will already know, but we are sitting on the couch in my office drinking vanilla flavored cacao, both deeply on our bleeds. And so this is like a very cozy, cocooned episode. And I hope that you, if you're listening, are also drinking something delicious with someone you love.
Oh, I love that. The couch is also where one of our first friend dates was.
Oh, it's
I
true.
feel like very fitting for some of the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Yes, that is so true. Oh, very cool. So Alex is one of my favorite geeky friends. Quirky, nerdy, and geeky in the best way. And she's also a neuroscience expert. So Alex, we're going to talk about brain, neuroscience, love, eco, and wherever else this journey takes us. But let's start with disconnection.
Okay.
What happens in our brains and in our bodies when we're disconnected?
Yeah. So we as human beings evolved all of these fantastic mechanisms to keep us safe and keep us alive. And one of those is human connection. So when we find ourselves disconnected from each other, we will pretty quickly move into a stress response, which basically means that the amygdala in our brains goes online and alerts us to the fact that there is danger present. And the danger in this context is the fact that we don't have other people around us to protect us, to keep us safe, to alert us to predators within the environment, to dangers from the weather, to help feed us and keep us warm at night. And on a biological level, our brains perceive that as being really, really dangerous to our survival. So when we're in isolation, when we're disconnected, we go into a fight, flight, stress response. And one of the things that can come with that is hypervigilance. And ironically, one of the things that we can become even more hypervigilant to is other people. So the more and more we become disconnected, either through the things that we're experiencing in our day-to-day lives, like I know especially post-pandemic, a lot of work is remote. We're all online these days. Social media tends to kind of replace real life relationships. There's just a quality of life that we have right now in 2026 that is inherently more isolating and less community oriented. But the more that we kind of find ourselves moving into that or moving into it for other reasons, like maybe we struggle with our mental health, maybe depression is something that we have a proclivity towards, we will start to become hypervigilant of other people and more suspicious of other people. And then that further drives us into a state of disconnect because our hypervigilance and the stress response that we're in becomes something that then blocks us from being able to connect and actually get the need at a very primal level of human connection and interconnectedness met in the first place.
Wow. Okay. This sounds horrible because it sounds like a vicious cycle, right? Like,
yeah,
you're a little disconnected, you're getting stressed, you feel that is biologically stressing you. Like, not even what I'm hearing is it's not even like necessarily stressful thoughts. It's like your body, your brain responding to that as a threat, which then makes you less likely, like other people become a threat and then you reach out less, right? So it sounds like it could become a downward spiral.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the thing about the downward spiral is that our brains don't really know the difference between what is happening in physical reality and what we're imagining. If, for example, we've experienced bullying, right? Like where we've really been ostracized from community around us through no fault of our own. And then we start to, later in life as adults, this was definitely my experience, project onto other people that they're judging us or that they might be making fun of us behind our backs or that they are thinking really unkind things about us. It's like that is just as real to us on some biological level as if ostracization was actually happening. So it almost doesn't matter whether or not it's happening in physical reality, or rather whether it's just a thought or a figment of our imagination. The effect that it has on us is still the same and can still drive us downward.
But I can also imagine it could drive us upward. Like, I imagine, Joe Dispenza and some of these meditation people are like, just imagine that you're deeply connected and that you're safe, and then that affects your neuroscience too, right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I think it just requires a lot of intentionality because we all have these cognitive biases. One of them is a negativity bias, where basically our brains learned that it is more likely to keep us safe if we're looking out for the things that are not going right or the things that are painful or scary, as opposed to the things that are really wonderful and good about the world and our lives. But yeah, we can absolutely move it in the other direction, but we have to be using conscious, intentional choice to do that.
Right. Okay. So imagine like somebody listening to this is feeling like a little bit disconnected. Let's say from their intimate partner. We'll start there, right? Because start closest to home. They're feeling disconnected. Their body's going into stress, fight or flight. What happens next in their brain?
Yeah. So when we're in fight or flight, our threat detection system is online. And when it comes to intimate partners, what that really means is we're either seeing our partner as a threat to our needs getting met, or we're seeing the possibility of them leaving, if that happens to be the particular flavor of our attachment, wounding, as a threat to us being okay. So in either situation, we kind of move into this thing that ideally is like the safest, most nurturing, loving part of our lives, into a huge source of a threat to our survival on a biological level.
Okay, wow. So I'm going to slow this down. So you're feeling disconnected from your partner. Like maybe, they left without saying goodbye. There's like a little disconnect. And then your brain starts to see your partner as a threat.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds like a problem. What happens next?
It is a problem, but I also think that there's such an intelligence to even this happening because it alerts us to the fact that, something might be missing.
Okay.
Right? Like some form of emotional connection or really wanting to get that goodbye. Like it's just a disruption in the homeostasis that we can do something differently moving forward. What a lot of people do is that we immediately go into story or narrative about what that lack of an affectionate goodbye might mean. Like we go into, he doesn't care about me anymore. Maybe he's seeing somebody at work. Maybe like we spin out into story.
Not to him anymore.
Yes.
He doesn't even care about our relationship.
Yes, exactly. And I think that one of the most dangerous things we do is we put ourselves in their shoes and we think about what it would mean if we were to behave in the way that they behaved, right? It's like if I forgot to say goodbye to my partner, Brett, before I
would be mad at him.
Work, it's because I'm mad at him. So he must be mad at me. It's like we formulate all of these stories and try to figure out what it means. And we've been using this phrase of fight or flight a lot in the context of the conversation so far. And I think it's worth noting that our brains, if there's not a real danger to fight or run away from, will try to do that in other ways. So rumination, trying to like incessantly problem solve, spinning out into these stories is just another way that our brains try to fight with thoughts instead of with fists.
Wait, so you mean if I'm analyzing something really deeply, that's also a way that I might be in fight or flight?
Yes. And that's usually a fight mechanism that we do on a cognitive level, right? The opposite of that, fleeing, would be like, I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to ignore him when he comes home. I'm not even going to acknowledge it. I'm going to pretend that this didn't bother me, right? It's like we can do that on these very subtle cognitive levels too, not just in physical reality.
Wow, interesting. Okay, so I will share. James and I are open to conceiving our third baby, and I notice my brain wants to constantly analyze and try to figure it out. Like, is this symptom it? Is this it? How do I make it just so? What you're saying is that could be like a low level like fight response.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
Whoa, light bulb moment.
I know.
Wow,
Because
I had no idea. I thought I was just really smart. No, I'm just kidding.
Well,
I knew I was neurotic, but I didn't associate it with a fight response.
you are really smart. That's that I love about you and I love about our friendship is that it's very intellectually stimulating for me. And, our brains can't fight imaginary tigers,
Yeah.
right? It's like most of the dangers that we encounter in 2026 happen in the realm of the mind. And
So true.
we will try to work through them at the level of the mind as well. Obsession, rumination, incessantly trying to solve a problem that doesn't really have a solution. All of those things can be
Constantly talking to Chatty about it.
constantly talking about Chatty about it,
Yeah, GTP.
constantly talking to your friends about it, just like running over it, like again and again and again and again, can be a form of mental fighting.
Wow. Okay. Okay, cool. This is really interesting and really illuminating because I can imagine a listener maybe is in a fight with their partner and they're like obsessively trying to analyze it. Why am I doing this? Why are they doing that? What's happening? And to know that like, oh, your body's in a fight response right now as you're trying to process this.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I do with my clients early on as well. When we look at whatever behaviors are manifesting themselves, whether it's between the partners, like nagging, for example, or whether it's happening internally, like psychoanalyzing our partners and trying to figure out what's going on in their own brains. Even if we're not saying anything out loud to them, it's like, okay, does this pattern have an air of fight to it or an air of flee to it? And then looking at our partners in the same way of, okay, what's coming up for them right now? Whether it's they're kind of shutting down and going silent, they're giving me the silent treatment, or something else. It's like, does that have an air of fight or flee to it? And I think the reason why that's so helpful is because it helps us slow down enough that we can look at it as fear rather than just dysfunctional behavior. And I think as soon as we can connect to the fear that we see in our partners and in ourselves, it becomes a lot easier to empathize with each other.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'm going to stay with the fight or flight just for a second before we get to fear because I'm like, there's so much in fear.
Yeah.
So I know my default is fight, whether it's cognitive, figuring it out, analyzing, or like physically lashing out. Not physically, I'm not hurting anyone, but like verbally lashing out, I mean. Or fight through like a HIIT workout. I know that my partner's default is more flight in that he will go very logical, very like almost aloof. Or he can get like a little bit like foggy and confused. Like what else are ways that someone might go into flight that might not be immediately like they're not physically running away, but they're in flight mode?
Yeah, well, I think the confusion piece is really interesting because when I hear that from you, Megan, that strikes me more as a freeze response.
Oh, okay.
Because when people are so emotionally flooded that they can't necessarily think clearly, that's usually like a deer in the headlights moment, freeze, almost overwhelm kind of thing versus, right, like, oh, we're just not going to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this right now. Or somebody who even with themselves is like, I don't need to think about this, doesn't need to be figured out. It's a non-issue. It's a non-problem. Somebody who's telling themselves that kind of inner
like a health issue. You know, they're like, I'm not going to think about it. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look at my labs.
Exactly. That kind of avoidance is flee at a very subtle cognitive level.
Okay. What about in a fight? Like, what would a fight, flight, freeze look like in an intimate fight with a partner?
I don't know if you've spoken with your listeners about like pursuer, withdrawer.
Not yet. But that's been a really juicy one I've been talking about lately. Yeah, I want to look more at you guys so you feel included.
I know. It's easy to forget. I left off in our conversation. We want you to feel like you're a part of this too.
You are. You're here.
So a lot of relationship science shows that typically when couples are in conflict, there is one person who will kind of assume the role of pursuer and one person who will assume the role of withdrawer or distancer.
Okay.
The person who's in the
pursuer. James is withdrawer.
Yeah, I think Brett and I can kind of like flip back and forth depending on what the situation entails. But I would say by and large, I am the withdrawer and he is the
for sure
pursuer. But typically the person who's in the pursuer role is the person who's exuding a little more of this fight behaviors. Like they want to talk about it until it's fully solved and figured out. They don't want to take a break. They might be the person who's like slowly raising their voice louder and louder and louder. Or if they can sense their partner kind of shying away from them or shrinking back, they like want to lean in more. They're like, we just need to figure this out. We just need to talk about it. We can't go to bed angry. We need to do this right now. Versus the person who's withdrawing, they typically will find themselves in more of the flee patterns of like, we don't need to talk about this. We don't need to figure it out. Or they might say the right things performatively in an effort to try to make the conflict go away as quickly as possible. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Even if they don't actually mean it, just because they want it to be over with. They want it to be done. They don't want to deal with it.
And can flip-flop, right? Like, I'm just thinking about my relationship. I often am like, let's talk about it. But then if he leans in like too much or whatever, then I'm out. I'm like, I need some space.
Well, this is what I find so interesting about the stress response.
Yeah.
In the world of science, they call it the predatory eminence continuum.
Whoa.
This is based on like evolutionary biology, where like thousands and thousands of years ago, if we were on the savannah, and there was a tiger that was chasing us or attacking us, if we could fight the tiger, we would. Like our, MO is to fight when we see the opportunity to successfully fight.
Okay.
If we don't think that we would be able to win a fight, like with a tiger, for example,
the
next thing that we would do is flee.
Okay.
So if we can fight, we'll fight. If we can't fight, we'll run.
Right.
If running feels like it's not going to be effective, we'll go into freeze, we'll go into overwhelm, we'll go into shutdown.
Okay.
That kind of deer in the headlights moment where it's like, it doesn't matter what I do, I can't win this.
Okay.
And I think those patterns can be developed really early on in life as well. I think that kind of lays the blueprint for a lot of our attachment styles and a lot of our conflict styles based on what we see our parents doing, what we see the people around us doing, and some of our most formative romantic relationships.
Okay.
So my guess is, for you at an early age, you learned that if I can fight, it can be effective. And for James, he probably learned like fighting is actually not effective. So I'm just going to withdraw.
Right.
Same thing for me. If I could have fought, I would have, but I learned at a very early age, very explicitly for me, like when I raise my voice, when I get a little bit louder, it doesn't yield the results that I want. So I'm just going to withdraw.
Okay. So I learned to like fight, but then if he leans in and he's like, if he looks at all angry, then I start to flee.
Yeah.
Is it because he's bigger, stronger, and becomes a predator to my threat brain?
I would guess, like, of course, I don't have x-rays and can't actually see what's happening, but I would guess that there's some part of you that detects at that point, oh, I can't actually win this through fighting. Maybe I'll be able to survive this conflict through withdrawing now or through taking space.
Interesting.
And knowing what an analytical brain you have and that you also like to do the overthinking thing and like just trying to figure it out and just trying to problem solve. I would also guess that your withdrawing after James meets you also gives you a little bit of space to think through, like, is there any way I can come back even stronger or even more articulate or to prove my point or to like figure this out together as a team.
Yeah.
My guess is that it would give you the space to then go back into fighting, even cognitively.
Totally.
To meet him.
Yeah, that really makes sense. And it's so interesting to notice like that all of this happens, or a lot of it happens subconsciously, right? At the level of the body and the nervous system. And because rarely in a fight, and I'm just using my relationship as an example because I think it's cool to like ground it in a tangible. Rarely in a fight, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to try and win this argument. Let me amp up the fight, you know, or let me like run away because he's bigger and stronger. But it's like we go into it's instincts, I think, when we're fighting with a partner.
Yeah, it's very primal.
Right?
The research shows that most of us, when we're in conflict, will do the same thing over and over again, even though it doesn't work. Like you can think about the very stereotypical example of, you know, in a couple, somebody raising their voice because they don't feel heard and they have a really strong need of like, I want to feel heard. I want to feel understood. So the volume just keeps getting louder and louder. And the partner is really scared of like noise and volume. And so they just kind of shrink and get more and more and more shut down. But it's like we both will participate in those things. So like withdrawing, pulling back and raising the volume, even though it doesn't actually get us closer to what we want, because there's some very subconscious stuff that's coming online and kind of taking over. You know, when we're in a fear response, when we're in a stress response, our neocortex, so that's like the most human developed, higher level thinking, verbal, cognitive. Yeah, all of that starts to kind of go offline. So we're less able to think logically, rationally, critically,
right,
when we're under stress.
Totally makes sense. Okay, so you mentioned that these come from fear. So I can imagine that if you are seeing yourself in these patterns, that maybe the way through them is to help your body feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Well, ironically, one of the things that helps us come back to a place of safety is oxytocin. Oxytocin plays a really critical role in regulating our nervous system and moving us from that sympathetic.
Let me just pet you so we can increase the oxytocin.
We should probably tell people why.
Oh, yeah. So petting increases oxytocin.
It does. Oxytocin is known as like the love hormone or the cuddle hormone or the bonding hormone. And it's released through safe, loving physical touch, which Megan was just
demonstrating.
I use the keyword safe and loving though, because not for everybody, touch feels safe and loving. You know, it's
a really good point.
Yeah, it's going to depend on the person, but we can get oxytocin through eye contact. We can get it through giving and receiving gifts. We can get it through giving and receiving support. Mothers, right? It's like uterine contractions are one of the biggest sources of oxytocin. That's why mamas feel so connected and bonded to their babies, because labor is massive uterine contractions, right?
Orgasm. Like breastfeed too, uterine contractions.
Yes, orgasms, uterine contractions.
Wow.
Orgasms also for non-uterine owners, they get oxytocin from it. But taking a moment to reconnect with, I think, either that person, your partner, if you can, if you're, bless you.
Thank you.
If you're in such a place where there's like so much anger online or so much
oh my God.
where there's so much disgust that's online that, you know, looking at them at that moment feels more stressful than soothing, then it can be someone else. You know, you can take a break, you can call a friend, right? Giving or receiving support, like reaching out for help, connecting with other people, ironically, becomes one of the really important parts of regulating our nervous system enough that we can calm down until we get to the point where we can think really clearly and truly figure out a path forward together.
Wow. Okay, so oxytocin is kind of like the key that rules them all. It sounds like oxytocin is really important. And I was involved with orgasmic meditation. Some listeners might know, and they studied it. And the key thing they found is that it increases oxytocin, and that's what delivers so many of the health benefits. Let's talk about oxytocin. Do we have enough of it culturally? Are we deprived? How do we have more of it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we have enough of it. I honestly haven't seen the research on like whether we're living in a...
I feel like we're a little deprived.
I mean, Are you and I deprived? No, probably not. Is most of the world deprived? Maybe. I think because we live in a culture that's becoming more and more isolated, I would guess a lot of people are. But as I mentioned before, it doesn't just have to be with a romantic partner. It can be with a friend. The other thing it can be with, that releases a lot of oxytocin is like disproportionately round head to eye ratios. So like babies, puppies, and kittens.
Oh my gosh. Puppy therapy.
Puppy therapy, kitten therapy. It doesn't even need to be in person. Like there's so many
cat videos.
There's so many cat videos and like kitten accounts on social media.
Okay, so it's real medicine is what you're saying.
It is like actual regulation, like real-time regulation that can help bring us down.
This is another point why we need to adopt a kitten. Yeah. I'm really pro kitten at the moment.
I mean, at the very least, to keep the snakes away. But
wild over here in Bali, you guys.
I don't know. We might get more podcast episodes with a lot more sneezing in them.
We're both allergic to cats, so
severely.
It's a bit of a problem.
Severely allergic to cats over here.
Okay, so the things that create oxytocin, baby animals, in person or video. Eye contact.
Yep.
Safe and loving physical touch.
Yep.
Offering and receiving help.
Yep.
This reminds me of like why it's so important. Everyone's talking about like, okay, we need a village, right? We need to re-village. We need to like reweave the fabric of our communities. We're spending a lot of time looking at screens, which I can imagine is more dopamine than oxytocin.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe let's speak to that for just a minute about screens, dopamine, oxytocin.
Yeah. Well, what I think is so interesting about the screens and dopamine is that it is like unmatched, like what we can get from a screen versus the real world. And so some of the research that I've looked at that has been the most depressing to me shows, because dopamine is also very addictive. It's the thing that gets our brains really hooked to slot machines at the casino when we develop a gambling addiction, or, you know, to any sort of drug or alcohol. Like it is the thing that creates chemical dependency on a neurotransmitter level. And so every time we're receiving a flood of it, we need more and more and more. That quota goes up. So the more time we spend on screens, the more time we need to be spending on screens to get our dopamine level matched. And what that means is the real world, the sunset, this incredible view, you know, nature, the jungle on a biological level becomes less and less satisfying to our brains.
Oh no, another vicious cycle. Another downward spiral. Okay, it's interesting how now we've touched on like two really important downward spirals, right? One in terms of like isolation and threat, and one in terms of screens and dopamine. We talked about how oxytocin is like the thing that takes you out of the downward spiral of relationship. What gets us out of the downward spiral around screens, dopamine, wanting more screens, wanting more dopamine?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I think it's the same as any sort of chemical dependency where there has to be a period of withdrawal.
Oh, we got to detox our screens.
Yes. On a very practical level, for me, what that's looked like is I downloaded this app to my phone called OneSec. And I basically create a shortcut on my phone. It'll walk you through how to do this, where anytime I try to go on Instagram or social media, it makes me wait. It's more than 1 second. It's probably like 60 seconds and I have to watch this thing. And then it's like, you've tried to go on Instagram 20 times in the last 24 hours. Like, are you really sure that you want to go on right now?
A little conscious check.
And then I'm like, do I not? And then just having that moment of intentionality around it, I think is really helpful. Yeah. But also giving ourselves space to really, really detox from it. Like my phone lives on do not disturb all day long. I'm very hard to get a hold of. All of my friends and my partner know that I'm unlikely to respond in a really sufficient time. You know, for me, what that also looks like is all of my work is run through email. So it's like I sit down at my computer, I answer my emails, and then I'm done with it for the day. And my phone, I think just in terms of accessibility, is something that I keep really separate. You know, I create physical barriers between me and my devices, right? Like,
I'm so with you. I have the same boundaries as you do. I had the 1 second app, and I don't have it on my homepage. I have all my notifications off. And I think it's really important though, because it's like you're saying, like it's a drug, right? Like our screens, our social media, it's a drug. And I'm going to go on a quick rant because I think this is important.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, I don't know why I'm scrolling on Instagram endlessly. And it's like, because there's billions of dollars spent in R&D trying to figure out how to hook you better and better and more and more. And it's like the system is designed to hijack and capture your attention. And it's not a personal failing. It's a system design. So what that means is like we have daily interactions with, let's just call it cocaine.
Yeah.
Call our screens cocaine. Like we're just taking like regular bumps of cocaine. And imagine someone listening to this like, oh shoot, I want to detox. What can they expect to happen in their brains and bodies as they start to create like some boundaries around their screens and their use around social media? And
yeah, well, on a very practical level, the muscle memory and the impulse is going to be the same as it was before.
okay, like smoking.
Yes. So it's kind of like, have you ever changed the lock on your phone? And then the first few times you try to go in, you put in the old code or, like your ATM pin.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, no, wait, like that wasn't it. But my muscle memory is already wired to do the same thing. It's like our impulse to go to those things is still going to be there.
Okay.
So if we look at these very subtle ways, how can I slow down the impulse? Well, it could be changing the lock on my phone. It could be changing the key that I need to get in so that it just takes me a little bit longer before I'm like falling down a rabbit hole and spending 3 hours on TikTok looking at beauty tips, which I never do. Because I'm not
naturally beautiful.
I'm not vain at all. Little bit. I do love to go down like the holistic beauty rabbit hole, but I digress. So looking at, okay, like what can I expect? My impulses are gonna be the same as they were before.
Yep.
But when I'm intentionally not acting on those things, it's kind of like, I don't know if anybody's listening, if you know someone who has obsessive compulsive disorder, right? Where it's like the compulsion is there, the impulse is there. And the longer I go without giving into it, whether it's checking my phone, checking my Instagram DMs, or compulsively washing my hands, the level of stress that I feel is going to increase.
Whoa.
And the reasons why our bodies do that is because the more I can turn up the level of stress and not participating in that behavior, the more likely it is that I will seek out that behavior in order to give myself some relief.
Wow. Okay. So let me put it in my terms. Because one of the things I want to do is like James and I put our phones in a drawer all afternoon so that when we're done with work, so that we're not on our phones in front of the kids, we're not looking at messages, we're just fully present. So what you're saying is if this is a new behavior, the longer that the phone is sitting in the drawer and we're not looking at it, our stress is going to be going up.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, this is a big light bulb. What do we do about that? Well, first of all, that's just really good to know. And how will that stress look in our bodies first?
Yeah, well, very specifically to the phone example, what that could look like is just this idea in our head of like, oh, I wonder if so-and-so has texted me today.
Yes.
Or I wonder if that email came through that I was expecting. Or, oh, I really want to order food for dinner tonight instead of like on this app. Instead of,
oh, I just need my phone to put on music.
I just need one thing. And then they're like, oh, no, wait, I'm not doing that right now because I'm staying away from my phone today. It's up in the drawer in the bedroom, out of sight, out of mind. And then we can start to feel this little like bodily irritation that comes with it. And I think the physical sensations look different for everybody. For me, it feels like this little kind of buzzing in my chest. And if it's something that my brain is telling me is really important, like, but what if this person has texted you? I might feel like a pit in my stomach. So I think the thing to look out for you, Megan, and for anyone who's listening is like, what are the signals that your own body is giving you that its level of discomfort is rising? And
mine is like restlessness. I can't quite settle into one activity.
Yeah, for a lot of people, there's like a fidgeting that takes place, like bouncing the leg or flicking the pen or like whatever that may be. And being able to, I think this is where mindfulness is really, really important and a very critical skill to have. But being able to be with that discomfort, to be with that sensation without giving in to whatever the impulse or compulsion is until it reaches such a high peak and you're still staying present with it and aware of it, that eventually it has no choice but to wane. Because the more your body gets used to every time Alex feels tightness and buzzing in her chest and this knot in her stomach, she'll reach for the phone again. The more my body learns, well, I just need to feel that more strongly. And then Alex is more likely to give in. Like her willpower.
Neurons.
So weak, you know?
Oh my gosh. Neurons that fire together, wire together. I remember from when I was in neuroscience, it's like then the neural pathways get stronger. And like it's like a river groove gets deeper.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Wow. So imagine I'm going to do this detox from social media experiment. How long am I going to be stressed out? Like, is this a forever thing? Is this like a 2-day thing?
This is my least favorite answer to give whenever someone asks any question. And unfortunately, it's very common. Yeah, it's a really common answer that I give, which is like, it depends.
Yeah.
I don't know how to quantify how addicted you are to your phone or how addicted anybody is to their phone.
Right.
And I also don't know, you know, how effective or successfully you're going to be able to just be with and witness and observe your own impulses without giving into them. You know, for some people, it's going to take a little bit longer than others.
Okay. Fair. I mean, fair enough. Everybody is different. Every moment is different. Every context. Okay. This is really inspiring though. And it really gives me a lot of compassion for myself and for all of us that like, say we want to spend less time on our screens, say that we want to be more present in our lives, say we want to, you know, be more here, but are finding it hard to notice like, oh, this is neurochemical, you know, this is not like, this is not a moral for failing.
Yeah.
It's more, it's like, it's something happening in our brains.
It's something happening in our brains. And for the most part, it's not our fault, right? As you mentioned, this is a system that we live in, you know. Most people have iPhones these days. I remember this was maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I met a yoga teacher who is still using an old school flip phone, which even 7 or 8 years ago felt ancient. Like the kind where it's like you have to click the physical buttons 3 times before you could get to the letter S.
Oh my God. That is a barrier.
But that is, you know, since the rise of the iPhone, that is the only person I've met in like well over a decade who doesn't have an iPhone, who doesn't even have access to these things. So I think this technology is here to stay. It's going to be a part of our lives. We're going to be engaging with it and interacting with it. So I think we have to decide for ourselves what role we want it to play in our lives.
Yeah.
You know, to what extent we want to make ourselves available to and vulnerable to what these systems have in place to get us hooked. You know, that I think that's the real difference between a process addiction compared to a substance addiction. And I think technology falls probably somewhere kind of in the middle with like just how much it's prying on our brain chemistry, you know. So I
find it really interesting that the younger generations, some people are really addicted to their screens, but some people have gone exactly the other way and are like analog, offline only, you know, don't want to be on social media at all.
I saw this thing the other day that one of my friends is doing, and she's like, I'm getting off social media for a while. I'm returning to grandmother hobbies.
Grandmother hobbies.
She was like, I'm learning how to knit.
Oh my God. I started knitting again too.
I'm learning how to scrapbook. Wow. I'm going to start making, instead of like carousels for social media of like, this is what happened to me in the month. She's like, every month I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make a scrapbook collage of like
my soul is thinking
photos of like my favorite things that I did this month, like Polaroid pictures that I actually put in instead of just posting something that people are swiping through.
Tell me that doesn't have a little bit of magic and whimsy in it.
Maybe that's going to be our magic and whimsy thing that we start doing, Kevin Meg.
I'm feeling a lot of aliveness in this. Like I'm feeling really lit up. It's funny. I started knitting last month again too. I only had enough attention span for like this much of a scarf, but it was fun to like do things with my hands again. So much of my art has been digital for a while. And
Yeah.
yeah, I like that. I think it's rewarding.
What I think is so
Grandma hobbies.
Yeah, about hearing you say that is like so many of my friends, including you, do not really let their kids sit in front of a screen.
No.
And those kids are creating all day long. Like yesterday we watched Megan's daughter spend like an hour gluing lentils and black beans to a piece of paper.
It's true.
And she was so enmeshed in it.
She was.
But it's like, I say you, but this is me too. Can't spend like 10 minutes knitting. It's actually her attention span is like, okay, I'm over this now. Like I need some more novelty, which social media.
We're dopamine addicted.
We are.
It's not us, it's the dopamine. That's going to be our t-shirt slogan.
Yep.
No, it's interesting. I actually had a babysitter that after spending a day with my kids is like, you don't let them watch screens, huh? And I was like, no, how could you tell? And she's like, because they can pay attention to things for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that also brings me back to intimacy, because I think for intimacy to deepen, you have to be able to be present with your partner in a deep and true way.
Totally.
So I'm curious if you've noticed anything about our dopamine addicted phones and the link between that and the intimacy crisis that a lot of people are feeling.
Yeah, well, I'll start by sharing an analogy that I was thinking about earlier that feels relevant now as it pertains to dopamine. It's kind of like, I don't know if anybody listening has had this experience, but I certainly have. When you start using a vibrator more and more and more, for me, I can't have orgasms with my partner like when I'm in a season of using a vibrator a lot, because it's so much stimulation that it desensitizes you to like the real touch of a hand or the flesh of another human being.
We talked about as like detoxing from vibrators.
Yes, exactly. And so I think this is the perfect analogy for what we're talking about in terms of the real world versus the online world and social media and just being on our screens all day. It's like, it's so overstimulating. We get so accustomed to that we can't derive pleasure from real life. So I wanted to bring that analogy in.
Yeah, it's
because I think
really important.
It will be relevant.
Sobering.
It is the Eros of Eros and Earth.
Yeah. Let's get into it. Let's talk about some stuff.
And to answer, to actually answer your question, it was about intimacy, right? It was about how does this impact our intimacy?
Yeah.
I think people really struggle with the rawness and vulnerability of being physically seen by another person, especially when we live in an age where everything can be photoshopped online.
And all of your real textures, smells, and scents.
Yeah, all of that stuff gets washed away by like a generation of porn addiction where there's nothing like messy or gross about sex that we're seeing on our computer screens.
Yeah.
And I also think that
AI chatbots that perfectly mirror you.
Yeah, AI chatbots.
With no misunderstandings or interruptions.
Totally. So I think that so much of what we're experiencing online is getting us further and further away from messiness and imperfection and the vulnerability of being seen exactly as we are. And I think that real intimacy requires that. And I think people get really, really uncomfortable with it now, even more than, 20 years ago.
It's so true, right? Like we've created these sterile digital worlds that then make the real world feel so dirty, messy. Like, oh my gosh, like your boyfriend smells after going to the gym, gross. But no, I think it's making like real intimacy, the messiness of this, the vulnerability of it feel scary. And at the same time, the alternatives, porn, AI girlfriends, easier.
Yes, exactly.
So it's like rewarding your brain in a certain direction.
Yep. And what I have also seen, which I find really interesting, is that younger generations are moving further and further away from even wanting romantic relationships
That makes me
and
really
even like
sad.
wanting sexual relationships. It was almost like, I feel like our generation went through a really big phase of like casual sex, hookups, like friends with benefits, situationships, no strings attached. But the younger generations are almost going through the opposite where they're like, I don't want anything. Like, I'd rather be celibate, which there's nothing wrong with celibacy, I should add. But I think when it becomes more of a cultural norm because vulnerability is so uncomfortable and messiness is so uncomfortable and we don't know how to talk about things that are messy and awkward, which sex can totally be sometimes. I think that becomes really problematic.
It's so true. I wrote this article like 7 years ago about how young people today are having less sex than older people because of some of these, like the early buds of these trends. And I can imagine it's getting worse. Like we're having less and less sex. Like I don't have the exact stats, but I was reading about like young people having less sex than even older people are. And that blows my mind because we're supposed to be the most erotically alive time of our lives.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I wish I could tell you, but it perplexes me too. I think that there's something like culturally, generationally, of course, with the influence of AI and social media and technology that people are just getting to a point where they're like, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with anything that I don't want to. I can just retreat to my room or my space or, whatever, and not have to engage with this.
Okay. That makes me so sad on like a heart soul level. But also, this is going to sound a little cold. From an eco level, I'm like, okay, we could use a lower population. Maybe this is a good pivot to eco.
Okay, but could we? Because I thought that the population of the United States, for example, is going down.
It is.
But
the consumption's going up.
The consumption is going up. The population is going down. But then there are, like, for example, India and a lot of Southeast Asia, which is, where we're recording this episode right now. It's like the population is out of control. It is like exploding.
It's going up, for sure.
So, yeah, this is more your zone of genius. It's not really mine. I don't even know how we began to wrap our brains around.
No, this is something this was a point that really blew my mind because I was like, oh, we just need to have less kids, right, for the climate crisis. That's actually not the solution because it's not about it. I mean, population plays a factor for sure, but it's more about consumption of materials, energy, use, resources than the population. Like to your point, the US population is going down. Our consumption is still rapidly increasing. Whereas countries like Bali, when I look around at the community, they're much wiser about resource consumption. So that's a little tangent. But I think it's really important to notice.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because for a long time, I didn't know whether or not I wanted to have kids. And part of that was because I was like, well, the world is overpopulated. The world doesn't need more people.
I actually feel like that's a form of eco. I feel like that's a way racism creeps into the eco conversation.
Okay.
Because a lot of, and not your fault at all, but a lot of people are like, oh, those countries are having explosive population growth. It's their fault. Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of the emissions and consumptions are from the wealthiest nations whose populations aren't growing. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the wealthiest nations have created so much of the climate crisis. And yet a lot of the countries that bear the brunt and the impact of it are the poorest countries that also have population growth. So
that's so interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, and I also say this because I also had the same thought before I had kids of like, can I have kids in a world that feels like it's on the edge of collapse? Is it responsible? Should I? Can I? And what I ultimately came to is like, if I feel the desire, then I can. And we look at our consumption and how we live.
How did you get to a place of peace?
I don't know if I'm at a place of peace. I think I'm at a place of holding the tension, of like I believe the world's at the edge of collapse, and it's a profoundly hopeful decision to still have children, to still invest in our collective future. And my hope is that the way that we have children, as we continue to become more and more conscious of taking care of our resources, of the land, that like me and my kids and other families and other kids that are thinking about this and care about this can be part of stewarding the future.
I love that.
Yeah.
Makes me feel a little more hopeful too. And a little less guilty about the fact that I do have the desire now to have children.
Yeah.
Without fearing that I'm doing something like fundamentally damaging to the world in the choice to do so.
Yeah. Well, and it is damaging, right? And like, I think that's one of the problems with the eco movement is we can't be puritanical about it. You know, like drinking cacao, this caused resources. The AC's on, that's taking energy, that's resources. Like everything we do has an impact. So I'm not going to disappear. And at the same time, like we can be generative and creative about like how we move through the world.
I like that you use the word creativity or creative, because I think that really brings so much of our conversation around full circle back to this idea of fear and stress.
Yeah.
I think about something that one of my mentors, Amber Chris, used to say, and she used to say it in the context of making money. She would say, the only thing that you really need in order to make money is creativity. And there's nothing that kills creativity as fast as fear, worry, and panic.
Ooh.
And I don't think that that is just relevant to making money. I think that that's relevant to solving any problem. So I think we have to be able to be in the reality of the issues that are here and present without letting our fear, worry, and panic get in the way of being able to do something about it. And I think that comes back to this idea of fight or flee.
Yes.
Of, you know, am I going to bury my head in the sand and pretend that this is an issue and pretend that this doesn't happen out of avoidance? Or am I going to go so hard fervently trying to change everything that I can that I burn myself out and become so heartbroken and disappointed by the world that it devastates and ruins my day-to-day life because I'm in such grief around it.
I'm so glad we're moving here because I think this is such an important topic. Okay, we're going into eco-anxiety. Let's talk about this. Like this growing anxiety that people are feeling that the world is in the edge of collapse. I learned a new word, collapse aware. If you are collapse aware, which means you're looking around and you're seeing what's happening and you realize that the way we've been living, we can't continue to live like this. So there is a cliff, right? There's an edge of this way of living. And I know you work a lot with anxiety and you care a lot about the environment. So what do you see with eco-anxiety? How do you make sense of it from a neuroscience perspective?
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference between fear and anxiety from like a very scientific and psychological perspective is that fear is a reaction to something that is happening physically right now. Like if a snake slithered in through your office doors and onto the floor, you know, I mean, of course, right now it's hypothetical, but if that really happened,
I already feel the fear.
The reaction that we would have to that snake being here in real time, you know, that fight or flight response would be fear, and it would be useful. It would be really helpful for us to want to fight the snake, or we would probably both like jump up on the chairs and like try to avoid, run away in some capacity. Where that's differentiated from anxiety is that anxiety is the fear of a thought or an idea. And you know, in most contexts, in most situations, right, it's like the speech that I'm going to give in 3 weeks at work, or this dinner that I'm anticipating with my mother-in-law. I love Sue. So Sue, if you're listening, I don't have anxiety about that. But it's fear of the thought or an idea. So where I get a little stuck and what I like mull on is, you know, there are very few people right now that I think are in life-threatening situations that are really confronted by the reality of climate change. I think about the people who are living in Southern California during the fires last year. It's like the natural disasters, like the truly immediately life-threatening situations are happening right now in the world. And there are people who are experiencing them, but most of us are physically safe. But know that the brink of collapse is coming. Like we're collapse aware. So I think what that leaves us with is what you mentioned. It's anxiety, right? It's like the fear of a thought or an idea, knowing that this is impending, but that we most of us can't actually like feel the life-threatening danger in real time
Got it.
yet.
Okay.
So what do? We fight or run, and we can do all of those things cognitively. Like we mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, we can obsess, we can ruminate, we can try to mentally problem solve. We can become hypervigilant. We can judge and shame the people that we see throwing like cans of empty Coke out their car windows, burning their garbage here in Indonesia, which happens. We can go into avoidance and pretend that it's not a thing that's happening, that it's not real. Or we can bring it into physical reality, which I think is the only place that change really can take place.
Wait, before you bring it into physical reality, I want to talk about, because you just went through those fight flight responses so beautifully. And I can see so much of the way that I've responded to becoming collapse aware with like, I don't want to think about it. I'm just going to like pay attention to my family, right? Like I'm in flight. I'm going to fight. I need to do everything I can every minute of the day to fight this collapse. Or, you know, oh, look at that person that's still using Teflon coated pans. What are they doing?
Yep.
And those are, what you're saying is those are all fight, flight, freeze responses, right?
And they're all cognitive.
And they're cognitive.
But
okay.
The issue with that, which we touched on a little bit before, is that when we're in a stress response, we're not thinking as logically, rationally, clearly as we normally are.
Okay.
So it's like the quality of the thoughts are not, like, it's not actually moving the needle.
Got it. So that's why we're not bringing our best selves to the movement.
Exactly.
Because a lot of people are paralyzed in fight, flight, and freeze.
And yes, and that's why it can feel so productive to be judging that person over there that's burning their garbage, which I know doesn't happen in a lot of countries. That
maybe they're buying a lot of stuff at Walmart. That might be a U.S. example.
Yeah, like we can judge the person who's like loading up the Target runs are like such a thing in the U.S.
Oh my God, I know.
I grew up where
me too.
Let's just go to Target and like binge shop
and just like see what's in the dollar bin
and just get as much as we can for as little money as we can. Like that was a real thing when I was growing up.
Still is.
It still is. So it's like we could be in judgment of those people, and on some level, it feels very productive to us because it feels like a mental fight. It's like, by judging this person, by, you know, by stewing over, like, what could we do differently? Oh no, the world is going to end. Like, by turning the same wheel over and over and over again, there's some part of us that feels like we're moving the needle and that it's productive.
Guilty.
But it's not. Like, it doesn't actually make a difference. So that's why I think it's important that we bring our action into physical reality, is because the stuff that we're doing cognitively isn't actually changing anything.
So you mean just like resharing things on Instagram about climate isn't changing things? No, I mean, it is changing
awareness. It's probably contributing to eco-anxiety, which we touched on this earlier too, that any sort of disruption in homeostasis, any sort of discomfort is drawing our awareness to the fact that like maybe something could change here.
Right.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But I don't think that it's the thing that will like make a true impact, and an impact that allows us to feel more regulated, because when we're giving support, we can begin to regulate ourselves. It's like, what can I actually do to give support to this world, to the people that are here?
I love that. I recently have been really interested in the idea of creating a little food bank in front of my house. Like, you know, those little like free libraries that people have, doing that for food. And like thinking about like tangibly, how can I help people become more resilient to disruptions in the supply chain, which we know is coming because of collapse and all that. Like, how can I actually just like feed a neighbor, you know, and like make it like tangible and specific? Is that what you mean by like getting physical to combat eco-anxiety?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You did this beautiful thing a few months back, starting a WhatsApp group where we share our eco wins. Like, you know, everybody posts one thing that they did today, and then getting inspiration from that. And, you know, for some people, it's like, I went through my closet and I donated a bunch of stuff to a person who I knew who needed it. Or today I signed up for a compost service, you know, like those types of actual physical actions that we take They really do make a difference. And, when they directly benefit another person, we get the oxytocin hit that can help regulate us.
Well, there we go.
And so I think that bringing it into physical reality is important because that's where we really get to work with it at the level of fear instead of the level of anxiety, because anxiety can just become this like never ending cycle. Like there's always going to be another imaginary tiger to anticipate.
Right.
Climate change, even if we solved the massive issue of climate change, I'm sure there would be something else for us on like a global level to anticipate and to be in fear of.
Yeah. Well, even if we stop fossil fuels now, we'll spend like at least 100 years with the ramifications of it. So it's like, it's not going away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So it's like, how do we get into action? I think that's
I love that.
Thing.
I really love that. And that as a combat for eco-anxiety. You also mentioned creativity earlier being part of it. And I lately have been exploring how art and storytelling and play can come into the eco movement, because I feel like there's something really important to that. Let's talk about that from a neuroscience perspective. And then I know we need to wrap. This might even become a 2-episode arc. Let's see.
We can make it a 2-episode arc. I love that. So how creativity comes into play.
What's the neuroscience impact of creativity?
Well, for one, it gets us out of thinking in a very linear way. Because most of the time, our brains try to solve problems one of two ways. One is formulaically, and you can think of this like a math problem, right? Like as you're working through a math problem, you generally have a pretty good idea of like how far through the issue you are and how close you are to the solution.
Okay.
Like you can see like, okay, I'm about halfway there. I'm about 75% of the way there. Okay.
Building a spreadsheet.
Yes. It's like almost done. Like you can gauge how deeply into it and how far away from the problem you are.
Okay.
And that tends to feel very soothing for us to like know where we stand as it pertains to solving a problem. The issue is that we will try to do that, even though the way that our brain solves most problems is through what is known as insight. So that is on a subconscious level. And that is, you can think of it like when you go to sleep at night and your brain is in a REM sleep cycle or a rapid eye movement sleep cycle and you're dreaming. That's the time of night when your brain is going back through your day and also mapping that and like overlaying it on top of the entire network of experiences that you've had over the course of your life and creating all these connections between what's happening right now and big picture themes. Right. And this happens on a very creative level as well. It's like we're able to connect the dots in ways that are non-linear.
Okay.
And that happens subconsciously, which means that we have no idea how close we are to actually solving the problem.
Okay.
And so with things like climate change, for example, or I don't know, some issue that you might see in your local community, right? It's like for some things, there is going to be a formula that you can follow, like a system that you can put in place and you'll know how close you are to the solution.
Okay.
But for a lot of these things, they're going to be insight, which means that the more you can get into a creative headspace, like a less analytical thinking, like logical, rational, the more you can tap into your brain's ability to connect widespread dots and make it more likely that you'll come to a solution of insight.
Wow.
Which is how most of life's issues are actually solved. It's like that light bulb moment that occurs for us.
Wow. So most of life's issues are solved through insight, which happens when our brains are in a creative rest, maybe even like trance. In like trance, like, I think a lot of my insights come when I'm dancing. Because I'm like just moving and feeling. And I'm like, oh, I should do that episode. Or I should do that thing.
Yeah, well, I think the key word in what you just said is feeling.
Yeah.
Because our brains can't be in a state of perception when we're in analytical thinking.
Oh.
Like, we literally can't have...
We're not taking in inputs.
When we are feeling, the sensation of the cup on our hands or the taste of the cacao on our tongues, it's actually literally not possible for us to be analytically thinking when we're present to sensation and feeling.
Wow.
So feeling, like a feeling state, I think is incredibly important to making ourselves available for insight to come through and to solve some of the bigger picture problems.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Okay, creativity for eco-activists. That is a new thing. We have to wrap because not only am I low blood sugar, but my computer just told me it's low battery. If you were to leave people with like one question, one insight, what would you want to leave people with?
I would want to leave them with a little nugget of neuroscience because to me, this is like the most hopeful piece of information I've ever encountered, which is that our brains as human beings have about 80 billion neurons. And each of those neurons is capable of making up to 10,000 connections each. And there's this amazing neuroscientist at UC San Diego. His name is V.S. Ramachandran, and he did all of the research and all of the math very formulaically. He solved this problem this way. And he basically found that there are more potential connections between neurons in the human brain than there are atoms in the observable universe. So the potential we have of like what is happening inside of our heads is like, we can't even wrap our own brains around how much potential they hold. So I really think the human brain and the human capacity is the most hopeful thing that we have to connect with each other, to have better relationships, to save the world, to save the planet, to connect to our environment. So I would just leave your listeners with that.
Oh, thank you so much, Alex. It's been such a good episode. I loved having you here.
Thanks, Megan.
Yeah. And I'll make sure that all of Alex's links are in the show notes so you can connect with her after as well. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I've never done a podcast episode like this, but I'm glad that we've been able to do it like refined on our periods. Cheers. With hot chocolate. Cheers.
Cozy. I hope this episode touched you. If you loved it, share it with a friend or family member, or you can leave a review to help get the word out. Thank you. Until next time, root down, open up. Eros Earth.